What if I told you that the most powerful principles of wealth creation have been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years? The ancient wisdom that transformed ordinary individuals into extraordinary success stories throughout history isn't locked away in some secret vault. It's accessible to anyone willing to look beyond the surface of one of the most widely distributed books in human history. Welcome to an exploration that might forever change how you view both spirituality and prosperity. The principles that Napoleon Hill discovered after interviewing 500 of the world's most successful people align remarkably with teachings that have been available in Scripture for millennia. Yet so few have made the connection that could transform their financial destiny. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract abundance effortlessly, while others struggle despite working twice as hard? The answer lies not in luck or circumstance, but in understanding and applying universal laws that govern success. Laws that have been documented in biblical text and rediscovered by modern thought leaders who studied the science of achievement. This disconnect between available wisdom and applied knowledge represents, perhaps, the greatest untapped opportunity in your life. Today, we're going to bridge that gap by examining how the timeless principles documented in Scripture align perfectly with what we now understand about the psychology of wealth creation. The fascinating truth is that the Bible contains over 800 references to money and possessions, more than it mentions prayer, faith, or heaven. Yet most people have never approached these passages as a comprehensive system for creating prosperity. Instead, many have been conditioned to believe that wealth and spirituality exist in opposition, creating an internal conflict that sabotages their potential before they even begin. This misinterpretation has robbed generations of the abundance that was their birthright. The principles that Napoleon Hill articulated in his research on success are not new inventions, but rediscoveries of wisdom that has been available throughout human history. What you're about to discover in the next 30 minutes could fundamentally alter your relationship with money forever. I'm not offering quick-fix solutions or get-rich-quick schemes, but rather an invitation to understand how applying certain biblical principles, the same principles that have created fortunes across centuries, can transform your financial reality from one of limitation to one of abundance. These are not theoretical concepts, but practical tools that anyone can implement regardless of their current circumstances, education level, or financial starting point. The only requirement is an open mind and the willingness to challenge what you might have previously believed about the connection between spirituality and material success. Before we dive deep into these transformative principles, I want you to consider a profound question. If the path to prosperity has been documented for thousands of years, what has prevented you from fully experiencing it in your own life? The answer likely lies in misunderstanding, misinterpretation, or simply lack of awareness about how to practically apply these teachings. Today, that changes. By the end of our journey together, you'll understand not only what the Bible actually teaches about creating wealth, but also how to implement these principles in your daily life for remarkable results. The wisdom that transformed countless lives throughout history. The same wisdom that Napoleon Hill documented after studying the world's most successful individuals is available to you right now. The only question is whether you're ready to receive it. The journey toward understanding biblical principles of wealth creation begins with recognizing a fundamental truth that Napoleon Hill emphasized throughout his work. Thoughts are things with the power to materialize into physical reality. This concept wasn't invented in the 20th century. It appears repeatedly throughout Scripture. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, states Proverbs 23, verse 7, articulating what modern psychology would later confirm. Our dominant thoughts shape our actions, which determine our outcomes. The Bible doesn't merely suggest this as a spiritual concept, but as a practical law of creation. When we examine how the world's most successful individuals have accumulated wealth, we consistently find they understood and applied this principle, whether consciously or unconsciously. Consider how this principle manifests in Scripture's most successful figures. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream and implemented a strategic plan that created unprecedented wealth for Egypt during 7 years of famine. Solomon's wisdom attracted the wealth of nations. David began as a shepherd but became a king of immense wealth through strategic thinking and divine connection. These weren't coincidences, but demonstrations of the principle that prosperity follows certain patterns of thought and action. Napoleon Hill discovered through his extensive research that every person who had accumulated extraordinary wealth had first cultivated a certain consciousness, a prosperity mindset that preceded their material success. This same pattern is documented throughout biblical text for those with eyes to see it. What separates those who extract wealth wisdom from Scripture from those who miss it entirely is their ability to look beyond surface interpretations. Most readers approach biblical text seeking only moral guidance or spiritual comfort, overlooking the practical success principles woven throughout its narrative. The Bible consistently portrays wealth not as an evil to be avoided, but as a blessing that flows toward those who align with certain laws. I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth, states 3 John, verse 2. This holistic view of prosperity, encompassing mind, body, and material circumstance, creates the foundation for authentic abundance. The individuals Napoleon Hill studied had similarly comprehensive understandings of wealth creation as more than mere financial techniques, but as expressions of universal principles. The most powerful biblical wealth principle, one that Napoleon Hill would later identify as essential for success, is the law of sowing and reaping. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, states Luke 6, verse 38. This principle transcends simple charity. It represents the foundational law of circulation that governs all prosperity. Those who understand this law recognize that wealth creation begins with value creation. Money is merely a symbol representing the value you've contributed to others. The wealthiest individuals throughout history, including those Napoleon Hill documented in his research, understood that fortune flows toward those who solve problems and meet needs. They created wealth not by taking but by giving something of value first. What makes this biblical perspective on wealth so revolutionary is that it directly contradicts the scarcity mentality that keeps so many trapped in financial limitation. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes abundance. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. This paradigm shift, from seeing wealth as a limited resource to recognizing it as the natural result of aligning with universal principles, transforms your entire approach to financial prosperity. When you truly internalize this understanding, you stop viewing wealth creation as a competitive process where your gain must come at someone else's expense. Instead, you recognize it as a creative process where new value generates new wealth. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle when he found that the most successful individuals focused not on competing for existing resources, but on creating new ones through innovative service and value delivery. The second critical wealth principle found throughout Scripture involves the power of definite purpose and unwavering faith, concepts that Napoleon Hill would later identify as fundamental to all achievement. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, states Hebrews 11, verse 1. This isn't merely poetic language, but a practical description of how manifestation works. The most successful individuals throughout history have demonstrated an extraordinary ability to maintain unwavering belief in their vision long before physical evidence appeared. They understood what Scripture teaches, that faith functions as a creative force, materializing unseen possibilities into tangible realities. This principle appears repeatedly in biblical narratives, from Abraham's journey toward an unseen promised land to Noah's construction of an ark before any sign of rain. What makes faith so powerful as a wealth-creating force is its ability to overcome the greatest obstacle to prosperity: doubt. Throughout Scripture, we see individuals achieve the impossible not because of superior resources or connections, but because they refuse to entertain doubt despite challenging circumstances. If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, nothing shall be impossible unto you, teaches Matthew 17, verse 20. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle through his research, noting that every successful person he studied possessed an extraordinary capacity to maintain belief in their eventual success despite temporary failures. They understood what Scripture has taught for millennia. Doubt cancels creative power, while faith amplifies it. The wealthiest individuals are invariably those who maintain absolute conviction in their vision, regardless of present circumstances. This biblical principle of faith-driven achievement requires more than passive belief. It demands corresponding action. Faith without works is dead, states James 2, verse 20. This perfectly articulates what Napoleon Hill would later call applied faith, belief crystallized into decisive action. Throughout Scripture, we see that prosperity flows not toward those who merely believe in abundance, but toward those who act as if success were already guaranteed. Noah didn't just believe a flood was coming. He built an ark. Joseph didn't just interpret Pharaoh's dream. He implemented a 14-year economic plan. This pattern of faith-driven action separates wishful thinkers from actual achievers. The individuals Napoleon Hill studied demonstrated this same quality, taking bold action based on their convictions long before evidence of success materialized. Perhaps the most misunderstood biblical wealth principle involves the relationship between service and prosperity. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, teaches Matthew 20, verses 26 and 27. Many interpret this as a call to poverty, rather than understanding its profound economic implications. The wealthiest individuals throughout history, from biblical figures to modern entrepreneurs, discovered that financial abundance flows in direct proportion to the value they provide to others. This principle of service-based prosperity appears throughout Scripture and was rediscovered by Napoleon Hill when he observed that the world's most successful individuals had created systems that served massive numbers of people. They understood that wealth isn't extracted but earned through contribution. The biblical perspective on persistence in the face of adversity provides another crucial wealth principle. Though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again, states Proverbs 24, verse 16. This resilience in the face of setbacks characterizes every success story throughout Scripture and history. Napoleon Hill identified this same quality in his research, noting that temporary failure served as a necessary stepping stone toward eventual success for every wealthy individual he studied. They understood what Scripture teaches. Persistence isn't merely continuing despite obstacles, but learning from each setback to refine your approach. This converts failure from a terminal event into valuable education. The biblical figures who achieved the greatest prosperity, from Joseph to David to Solomon, all experienced significant setbacks that would have derailed those with less persistence. The third foundational biblical wealth principle involves the power of association and mastermind alliances, a concept that Napoleon Hill would later identify as essential for exponential success. Iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another, states Proverbs 27, verse 17. This principle recognizes that wealth creation rarely happens in isolation, but flourishes in the context of strategic relationships. Throughout Scripture, we see the most prosperous individuals surrounded by wise counselors, allies, and partners who expanded their capacity and influence. Solomon's wealth grew through international alliances. David's success was multiplied through his mighty men. Joseph's prosperity came through partnership with Pharaoh. This pattern of strategic association appears consistently among those who achieve extraordinary wealth. What makes this principle of association so powerful is the multiplication effect it creates. How could one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight? Asks Deuteronomy 32, verse 30. This mathematical progression, where two people achieve not twice but 10 times the impact of one, illustrates the exponential power of aligned minds working toward a common purpose. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind principle, after observing that every person of extraordinary wealth operated with the benefit of specific individuals who complemented their strengths and compensated for their weaknesses. These weren't random connections, but strategic alliances that accelerated achievement. The biblical perspective on prosperity has always recognized this multiplier effect, emphasizing that wealth creation accelerates dramatically through the right associations. The biblical approach to planning and preparation offers another crucial wealth principle that separates the prosperous from the perpetually struggling. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty, teaches Proverbs 21, verse 5. Throughout Scripture, we see that prosperity flows not toward impulsive action, but toward strategic planning. Joseph's 14-year economic plan saved Egypt and created unprecedented wealth. Noah's meticulous ark construction preserved life through catastrophe. Solomon's detailed temple plans created architectural wonder. This pattern of thorough preparation before action characterizes every significant success story in biblical text. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle, noting that the wealthy individuals he studied spent far more time planning their achievements than others spent planning weekends. What separates biblical wealth principles from mere financial techniques is their integrated approach to prosperity that encompasses character development. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow, states Proverbs 13, verse 11. This principle recognizes that sustainable wealth creation isn't about quick accumulation, but about developing the character qualities that naturally attract abundance. Throughout Scripture, we see that the most prosperous individuals possessed integrity, wisdom, diligence, and generosity, qualities that created trust, opened doors, and established reputation. These weren't superficial traits, but core values that determined their decisions and actions. Napoleon Hill identified this same pattern, discovering that lasting wealth invariably flowed toward those with character strong enough to manage it responsibly. Perhaps the most revolutionary biblical wealth principle involves viewing prosperity as stewardship rather than ownership. "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it," states Psalm 24, verse 1. This perspective fundamentally transforms your relationship with wealth from possession to management. Throughout Scripture, prosperity comes to those who faithfully manage resources rather than hoard them. The parable of the talents explicitly rewards those who multiply what they're given rather than fearfully preserving it. This stewardship mindset liberates you from the scarcity thinking that restricts wealth creation, allowing resources to flow through you rather than stagnate. Napoleon Hill observed this same principle among the wealthy, noting that they viewed money as a tool for creating value rather than as value itself. They understood that wealth functions according to flow dynamics, increasing when circulated productively and diminishing when hoarded fearfully. The fourth critical biblical wealth principle involves the power of words and declarations, what Napoleon Hill would later identify as autosuggestion in his research on success. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits, states Proverbs 18, verse 21. This principle recognizes that our spoken words program our subconscious mind, which then directs our actions toward manifesting those declarations. Throughout Scripture, we see this principle demonstrated repeatedly. God speaks creation into existence. Abraham is renamed from exalted father to father of nations before having any children. Declarations precede manifestations in virtually every biblical success story. The wealthiest individuals throughout history have similarly harnessed this power, carefully governing their speech to align with their vision rather than their current circumstances. What makes this principle of declaration so powerful is its ability to reprogram limiting beliefs that restrict prosperity. Most people remain trapped in financial limitation because their internal dialogue reinforces scarcity rather than abundance. Scripture teaches the opposite approach, speaking faith-filled words that align with prosperity principles regardless of temporary circumstances. Let the weak say, "I am strong," instructs Joel 3, verse 10, not as pretense but as a method for reprogramming consciousness. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle through his research, noting that successful individuals maintained carefully crafted affirmations that they repeated until those declarations became their dominant thoughts. They understood what Scripture has taught for millennia. Your words create your reality by directing your focus and programming your subconscious. The biblical perspective on visualization offers another crucial wealth principle that separates achievers from dreamers. Throughout Scripture, we find the concept that clear mental images precede physical manifestation. Where there is no vision, the people perish, states Proverbs 29, verse 18. This isn't merely poetic language, but a practical principle about how manifestation operates. Abraham was instructed to look at the stars, to visualize his descendants. Ezekiel saw dry bones become an army before physical transformation occurred. Joseph saw himself in a position of leadership through dreams before his elevation. This pattern of mental rehearsal preceding physical achievement appears consistently among those who create extraordinary wealth. Napoleon Hill identified this same principle, noting that successful individuals possess the ability to hold a clear mental image of their desired outcome regardless of present circumstances. What most people fail to understand about biblical prosperity principles is that they operate according to consistent laws rather than arbitrary blessing. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows, states Galatians 6, verse 7. This principle of cause and effect governs all wealth creation, eliminating randomness and establishing predictability in financial outcomes. Throughout Scripture, we see that prosperity isn't bestowed capriciously, but flows according to specific principles that anyone can apply. This democratizes wealth creation, making it accessible to anyone willing to align with these laws rather than restricting it to the fortunate few. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle through his research, finding that wealth creation follows predictable patterns regardless of background, education, or starting circumstances. The final and perhaps most profound biblical wealth principle involves unconventional obedience, taking counterintuitive action based on higher wisdom. Throughout Scripture, prosperity often flows toward those willing to follow guidance that contradicts conventional thinking. Noah built an ark before rain was conceptually understood. Abraham left established civilization for an unknown destination. Peter cast his net again after a night of failed fishing. This pattern of prosperity following unconventional obedience appears repeatedly among those who achieve extraordinary results. Napoleon Hill discovered this same principle, noting that the most successful individuals frequently took action that seemed illogical to observers, but aligned with insights they'd received through intuition or inspiration. They understood what Scripture teaches. Breakthrough achievement rarely comes through conventional thinking, but through inspired action that others might consider foolish. As our exploration of biblical wealth principles draws to a close, let us reflect on the profound truth that has emerged. The path to prosperity has never been hidden from you, but has been available all along within Scripture's ancient wisdom. These principles, from the creative power of thought and the law of sowing and reaping to the importance of definite purpose, mastermind alliances, and faith-driven action, aren't theoretical concepts but practical tools that have created wealth throughout human history. Napoleon Hill's groundbreaking research simply rediscovered what Scripture had documented millennia earlier: that prosperity follows specific patterns that anyone can implement regardless of their starting point. The question isn't whether these principles work. History has proven their effectiveness countless times, but whether you will have the wisdom and courage to apply them consistently in your own life. What separates those who experience extraordinary financial abundance from those who merely read about prosperity principles is implementation. Knowledge without application creates no value. The biblical figures who achieved the greatest wealth, Joseph, David, Solomon, and countless others, weren't merely aware of these principles but applied them consistently despite challenging circumstances. They understood what Napoleon Hill would later document: that temporary failure serves not as an endpoint but as education for those committed to their vision. Your financial future will be determined not by what you know, but by what you do with what you know. The principles we've explored today have created more wealth than any other system in human history, but they require something from you: the dedication to apply them persistently until your external circumstances align with your internal vision. Consider for a moment how different your financial reality might be 1 year from today if you began implementing these biblical prosperity principles with unwavering commitment. Imagine the transformation that could occur if you approached wealth creation not as a mysterious process, but as the natural result of aligning with universal laws. Picture yourself developing the prosperity consciousness that precedes material abundance, cultivating the character qualities that naturally attract wealth, and taking the inspired action that converts knowledge into results. This isn't wishful thinking, but the practical application of principles that have created fortunes throughout human history. The same wisdom that transformed countless lives, from biblical patriarchs to modern entrepreneurs, is available to you right now. The most important insight from our exploration today is that biblical prosperity principles work not because of religious affiliation, but because they align with how the universe actually operates. These aren't arbitrary rules, but descriptions of natural laws that govern achievement in every field. When Scripture states, "Give, and it shall be given unto you," it's not establishing a religious obligation but describing the law of reciprocity that governs all value exchange. When it teaches that faith is the substance of things hoped for, it's articulating how manifestation works at a fundamental level. Napoleon Hill discovered these same principles through secular research, confirming that they operate universally regardless of belief system. This understanding liberates you to apply these principles practically, rather than approaching them merely as spiritual concepts. As you leave this exploration today, I invite you to make a life-changing decision. Commit to implementing at least one biblical prosperity principle consistently for the next 30 days. Whether you choose to focus on cultivating a prosperity mindset, implementing the law of sowing and reaping through strategic giving, developing a definite purpose, forming mastermind alliances, or any other principle we've discussed, your consistent application will begin generating results that may astonish you. The wisdom that Napoleon Hill documented after studying the world's most successful individuals, the same wisdom that has been available in Scripture for millennia, becomes yours only when you move beyond intellectual understanding to practical implementation. The Bible has indeed taught how to get rich throughout human history, but few have put its principles into practice. Will you be among those who do? If you found value in this exploration of biblical prosperity principles, please support our continued work by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing this message with others who might benefit from these transformative insights. Remember, the prosperity you seek has always been within your reach. You need only apply the principles that create it.